with Namio Chats today, and I am Coach Cassandra with Namio Health.
And I am Dr. Natalie Muth with Namio Health as well.
And today we're talking about eating breakfast. And if you find that your kids skip breakfast frequently, or maybe you feel like as it's getting to be back to school time, there's just less time to make breakfast, maybe your kids aren't very hungry, this episode is for you. We will talk about some solutions for your family that are hopefully helpful, helping your kiddos to get a breakfast that will help them to feel full and help their brain be ready for back to school. So,
Yeah,
Dr. Muth.
I just
Go
want to say
ahead.
I'm just really glad that we're talking about this because it comes up all the time about breakfast being too busy to have breakfast, or does it really matter? The studies sometimes show that you should have it. Some studies people say shows that it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So it's good we can kind of like talk through this one a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So, is breakfast really the most important meal of the day, as it's sometimes referred to? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think all three meals of the day are very important. So I think, and really just having consistent regular meals, we know goes a long way in lots of areas to help kids and their parents and everyone really to be able to think better, do better, be healthier, get all the nutrition we need. Um, but absolutely starting the day off with a healthy breakfast is really important, especially for kids, not only for their health. And we talk a lot about, their nutrition and their overall, being at a healthy weight, that kind of thing. But it goes way beyond that, like their ability to focus at school, pay attention, to really have a lot of success academically and socially. There are studies that show like eating a healthy breakfast can really help a lot with all those things.
Yes, absolutely. And such a good point as we are getting into back to school time that we want the kids to be able to thrive and focus and be able to now sit through class to get all the way to lunchtime, right? When you're at home over the summer, there's a little bit more opportunity for, grabbing things from the kitchen or whatever. Maybe it's sleeping in, but now that we're going to be getting up earlier, getting out the door earlier, and needing some fuel that's going to help keep these kids full for a few hours.
Yeah, I was just
So I,
laughing to
oh, sorry, go
myself
ahead.
just when you're saying, yeah, sorry, I'm just like summertime and breakfast. I'm like, I have teenagers. Yeah, breakfast, if you call breakfast like, 12 o'clock or whatever time, they're getting up. And a lot of the patients I see and talk to, summertime, it's really the first eating of the day, whenever that occurs, but it's not when you typically might say breakfast. But to your point, as we're getting ready to go back to school and having to get up early and that hustle and bustle of everything, it definitely makes it a lot more challenging, but also important to figure out a way to make it work.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So my kids are younger and naturally still in that early riser stage. So I do look forward to the day when they're all sleeping in.
It will come
But
on cue right around 12:13. They go from being up at 6 a.m. to like waking up at 1 o'clock if you let it,
they
p.m.
want
if
to
you let
sleep
them.
in.
Yeah.
So for your teenagers who have to get up and out the door, who may have been used to sleeping in, what do you do in your house, or what tips do you have for that older crowd who may not be so interested in hopping up early and sitting down to eat breakfast?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things to point out too, because it is true, and we're talking about like breakfast is really important. And I mentioned, but just want to like emphasize like a healthy breakfast, especially because a lot of
Yes.
times, and also a lot of the studies you see that are kind of mixed or that might suggest that like breakfast isn't as important. A lot of times it's because a lot of what breakfast is for many kids and teens, it can really end up being like a high sugar thing if we're
Mm-hmm.
not careful, right? Like many cereals, they gear towards breakfast, but they often have lots of added sugars in them. And of course, they have, with the extra orange juice, it's got the sugars with that and various other things, or a bar on the run. There's lots of chances to get a lot of sugar and less healthy options than we would ideally like if we're not kind of thinking about it or careful. So I would say like breakfast very important. Trying to get a healthy breakfast that has if you can, a little bit of protein or some whole grains, great opportunity to get some kind of fruit on board. And even for some teens that I work with, like, hey, grab a banana on the run and eat it in the car if that's what needs to happen, to try to get something nutritious in, even if you don't feel that hungry. Because a lot of times teens will say, oh, I'm not that hungry when I wake up. I don't really need anything yet. Just like trying to get something to start the metabolism going and to start the day off healthy is really important. So I can tell. So my house, and I will say, I'll be completely honest with you. My husband and I religiously every morning will have this breakfast I'm going to tell you about. My kids will sometimes want it, and sometimes they'll want something else. I might have older teenagers, so they're making a lot of decisions for themselves, which just goes to show like we can control what we can control. We take care of the things we can, and we create the environment that supports others who are making decisions to make healthy decisions. So um, we have gotten into making this amazing slow cooker oatmeal that we have every day. So not
Sounds
because
so good.
it's so good and it's so easy because it takes me, I timed it last night because I knew we were going to talk. So I was like, okay, how long does it actually take me to put this together? And it takes me exactly 10 minutes total to put the whole thing together at night before I go to bed, because I know the morning is going to be crazy and chaotic and there just isn't time to eat something. Or I always eat something. So there's time. If it's a priority, there's time, but not a time for everyone necessarily always. And at my house it was like not always happening. So I make this steel cut slow cooker oatmeal at night before I go to bed. It's super easy. So we'll share the recipe with you, but really it's like oatmeal, water, a little bit of, I use almond milk. You can use any kind of milk you want. Throw a couple of sliced apples in there, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of flaxseed, some vanilla, close it up, put it on slow cooker for slow for 8 hours. It'll beep in 8 hours. It'll stay warm for however long until you need it. And then in the morning, it's ready. You stir it up, throw on some blueberries, a couple of walnuts, maybe some dried fruit, and takes 5 minutes to eat it. And we just had like a very healthy, fiber rich, no added sugars, balanced, filling. My husband will say, he's like,
Yes.
this is great. Like, he's like, I'm full until 12:30 or 1 o'clock. Whereas when he was having a bar before work, because that's what it was
Mm-hmm.
before, and that's on the run, it's very common to grab a
Right.
granola bar or something. But he's having that. He's like, man, I was feeling hungry again at like 10 and, either having to wait or getting a snack, whatever. Whereas the oatmeal can really keep you full in a healthy way, balanced until it's time for lunch. My
Absolutely. So good.
teenagers sometimes will take it, sometimes they don't. But I always just put the blueberries out and or different types of fruit out,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll always grab it, even if they're not necessarily. I mean, we want to teach mindful eating. They're not always mindful, right? They're just grabbing because it's there, but it's a great way to be able to get some of that nutrition into without having to like be in a rush or be
Mm-hmm.
badgering. For the older kids at least, to be badgering them, to eat
Yes.
something.
It's out and it's there. Amazing. And I love that you said that your husband finds that that keeps him full as well. And as we think about kids being at school and their ability to focus and the foods that are so commonly that we're seeing advertisements for, or maybe it's even, if you're going to Starbucks in the morning, right? Like muffins or bagels or sugar cereal, those type of things are the foods where the kids are going to end up being hungry in 30 minutes, an hour, and their attention span is going to be less, and their behavior may reflect in that way as well. So having something that is ready to go is fantastic. I find that my kids have liked overnight oats, so similar, but like the cold version of that, where you're adding in some chia seeds and fruit and peanut butter. Or making egg bites has been another kind of make ahead one that we have found is protein rich, and you can also get some vegetables in there. There's not opportunity for vegetables in many breakfasts, but eggs or smoothies can kind of be one if you're doing a smoothie with some Greek yogurt and a fruit and a vegetable and even oatmeal in there as well. So I think with all of these, we're kind of hearing maybe the whole grain and a fruit or vegetable for fiber. And then some protein potentially also can help to round out that meal for fullness.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what you said too, just because I mentioned that, my kids don't always grab the oatmeal, but I've been doing hard boiled eggs also and having those in the fridge. And my son often will, he always will grab those. And so if you have a teen or a kid, rushing, you want to get some protein in, like if you already have hard boiled eggs in the fridge, also very inexpensive, great source of protein, and grab some fruit. If you can get the fruit in with the protein or the whole grain, you've got a really great breakfast that's not loaded in sugar. Because Cassandra, a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
examples that you were listing off and giving, like, it just made me think, oh yeah, P.S. Remind everyone, look at the labels on the foods just out of curiosity, and look at the added sugars, and
Mm-hmm.
just get a sense of like how much added sugar is in a lot of this stuff, because we don't realize it. We want to have breakfast, we know it's important, and kids are supposed to have 25 grams or less of added sugar a day ideally. So if you look, you're thinking breakfast, try to keep it as minimal as you can, less than 8 grams ideally if you can, but even lower would be better. But just getting familiar at least with what is currently, if they're having breakfast, what they're having, how much sugar is it, is there a way
Mm-hmm.
to kind of cut back on that sugar?
Yes, absolutely. And especially tricky when a food appears to be marketed as a healthful item, like the bars, like you were mentioning, right? They can kind of say whatever they want on the front of the package. So, no blame to
Look
the
on the
parents
back.
whatsoever. But yes, always on the back, look at the added sugar and ingredients there. And it can paint a very different picture from what they're trying to say on the front of the package in many
Yes.
cases.
Yogurt is another example of that too. If you can
Yes.
go with a plain yogurt, add some fruit, and if you need it a little bit sweeter, like add your own little bit of honey rather than the flavored yogurt, which can often be pretty high in sugar. Although if you compare brands too, that can help,
Mm-hmm.
because some brands of the same, if you're getting strawberry yogurt, let's say for example, certain brands, if you look at the back and look at the label, you'll see that the same strawberry yogurt has a lot less sugar from one brand than another one. So read the labels.
Yes, absolutely. And then before we got on here, Dr. Muth and I were discussing a study that came out just in 2026 that was looking at the importance of eating breakfast and kind of how, as kids get older, they tend to eat breakfast less frequently. So, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 18% of 14 to 18-year-olds do not eat breakfast, and with mostly girls eating breakfast less often. So, what do you think we can do in kind of like the family dynamic to support our kids and help ourselves? It's important for us too, right? To eat a healthy breakfast to get us going in the morning.
Yeah, because I was also going to add, of the studies we were talking about also showed that parents who eat breakfast are likely to have kids who eat breakfast, and the alternative, if parents who don't eat breakfast, are more likely to have kids who skip breakfast. So part of it, in which we always talk about, like, starting with what we can control. So we as the parents and caregivers, trying to be the model of what we would like our kids to follow whenever we can, realizing that there's lots of life that happens, but really trying to get in a routine of eating breakfast ourselves and trying to get that balance. And then especially with teens, let's like talk to them, have a conversation about it, have a conversation about breakfast. How do they feel about it? Sharing some of the data that shows like you're going to be able to focus better. You may do better in school, feel better, sleep. There's even studies that show they sleep better, physical activity patterns. But asking them, like, how do you feel about this? What might work for you? Would you be open to trying breakfast? What might be something you'd be open to eating? Or if not, like, what are the barriers? How do we work through them? So really having that open conversation and problem solving together is going to be the key. And with teenagers, trust me, I mean, anybody who has teenagers, this, but I have teenagers, as I've said like a million times. If they have the sense of control and it's something that they want to do and they feel ownership over it, much more likely that they'll try or they'll take steps towards doing it, versus if it's something that we make them do or tell them that they have to do, there's going to be a lot more likelihood of, or at least in my house, like more likelihood of like resistance to that. So really talk to them, have an open conversation, what they like, what they would like to try, and go from there.
Absolutely. I love it. And breakfast is one meal where I give my kids more choices, whereas dinner, it's kind of like this is dinner. But for breakfast and their lunches, as they're making them, so that they do kind of have some of that ownership and some of those choices. So if you're, have a couple of things available or take some time at the beginning of the week, whether it's with your kids, depending on their ages, or having them participate in some of the prepping, whether it's boiling some eggs ahead of time or doing Dr. Muth's overnight slow cooker oat recipe, kind of setting yourself up for success to overcome some of those barriers like lack of time or just not, if it's not being hungry, having something quick that's able to go on the road. Of course, in an ideal world, we could all mindfully enjoy our breakfast, but we know as we get back to school, that's not the reality. And so that's kind of what we want to plan for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add, if you try any of this stuff out or you find things that really work or really don't, we would love to hear from you. So please let us know, reach out, leave your tips in the comments, and we'll follow up with you.
Yes, absolutely. And we will also be sharing some of our favorite breakfast recipes on social media. So be sure that you're following us on Instagram and Facebook at Namio Health. Thank you, Dr. Mew.
Thanks, Cassandra. Bye, everyone.